Thanks for joining us on JDTV. Stay tuned for more product demos.
Steve, this is perfect. It's just slightly tacky. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rolling on what's called a conventional antifouling paint to the hull of this boat. This is going to give me both a mechanical and a chemical bond. And again, we have the general manager of Interlux with us today, Steve Schultz. And Steve, talk to me about conventional antifouling paints.
Well, conventional antifouling paints, John, are typically high copper bottom paints with a hard film. In the case of this particular product, it's Ultra. It's got a slime fighter in it, and it's also got Teflon to make it very hard and very easy to clean.
Okay, so it's got different biocides in it to keep different types of growth off of the hull bottom. Now, why would somebody want a hard antifouling paint rather than an ablative, one that wears away?
Well, they're very hard and efficient through the water. If they're looking for high-speed performance, it delivers very good performance that way. It also makes it very easy to quickly clean up the water line if anything floating in the water has caught up on the side of the boat.
Okay, now, my experience, you know, my grandfather owned a marina, and in the old days, a lot of the old salts would sit there and say, you do not want to switch paint companies. If you have Trinidad on the boat, you stick with Trinidad. If you have Interlux on the boat, you stick with Interlux. Is there any truth to that?
Well, John, I think you're referring to bottom paint compatibility, and a number of years ago that was a concern, particularly vinyl-based bottom paints, which aren't as common today, have very strong solvents in them, and they would attack the old bottom paints when you crossed the applications. Today, the bottom paints are much more compatible with each other, and it's really more important that you make sure that the old bottom paint is tightly adhered. If it's not, scrape off anything that's loose. You should sand it with 80 grit paper. Not a heavy sand, but just clean the surface off to get rid of anything that's left on top of there. Wipe it down with a thinner and apply your new bottom paint.
Okay. I really like the ablative bottom paints that are out there. And come on, I want to walk over to the other side of the boat. And the reason I like that, Steve, is I hate sanding. Okay, you can see how messy I am in the suit and everything else. And with the ablatives, because they kind of wear away like a bar of soap, there's not as much sanding involved as with conventional bottom paints.
That's correct.
Okay, but take a look at this. Remember I was talking about burnishing the tape? Okay, well the reason you do that, we've got 2 coats of antifouling paint on this. We have all of our barrier coats applied. And now when we go to pull our tape line, take a look at the nice, sharp, defining line that you get going all the way down the hull. We need to talk about this accessory right here. This is an aluminum engine bracket. It's made by Armstrong, and this is not like your fiberglass boat. You have to treat it a little bit differently. You have to etch it with some type of an etching primer, and then you can go ahead and put on your barrier coats, and then you can apply some type of an antifoulant paint to it. And what's the product that I'm using right here, Steve?
John, that's Trilux, and it's the appropriate paint for application to aluminum.
Okay, and what is the base material of Trilux rather than the base material of the Ultra?
Well, the Ultra is a high copper-bearing antifouling paint. It has about 70% cuprous oxide. And copper on aluminum, when immersed in water, is like creating a battery. And that can cause corrosion of the aluminum or the outdrive. You don't want that, John.
Okay.
You want a product that's developed specifically for application on aluminum.
Now, they also make a spray version, and there are a lot of boats out there that have aluminum accessories that you need to bottom paint if you're going to be keeping them in the water. And I'm talking about like aluminum drives with like an IO or something like that. Well, there are spray versions. There are different companies that make these types of paints as well. You've got Pedix and the big boating supply companies as well as Interlux. But take a look at the color that I've selected for this actual engine bracket. Notice that it's white. Well, there's a reason for that. Remember, this is a Bombardier test boat, and they have the Evinrude engine on it, and I'm trying to give them something that's going to look very aesthetically pleasing. And we need to thank all of the guys out at Bombardier. We also need to thank you, my good friend, Steve Schultz.
Thank you, John.
From Interlux. Thank you, along with Bob Donay. My crew worked real hard, but you know what? The most important person we need to thank here today is you, because you just spent the last half hour of your valuable time with us. Thank you so very much, but hey, time is running out. How about this? How about until we see each other again, can you do yourself a favor? Can you get out there and make your boat ship shape? Of course you can. We'll see you real soon.
See you next time on JDTV.